are these people?
World Socialist website, who, by the way, is under attack. They got named on that list of outlets and personalities. It's called the roller coaster, put out by the Ukrainian government, where they are naming
Of course.
a network of people. Yeah, including Tara Reid, by the way. Not INN, but Tara Reid got listed. Ron Paul, Jill Stein, the Green Party, Tucker Carlson. There's a ton of people on there. Max Blumenthal and the Grays owners, all those guys are on there. So World Socialist website, one of their writers in Ukraine got arrested and is right now being locked up and charged with subversion because he's a socialist. Literally arrested for his politics. Bogdan. So if you go to WSWS, it's at the top of their website right now. I wanted to give that a shout out. Kit Clarenberg talked about it as well. This is a persecution by an ally of the United States against a socialist website that is not doing anything other than questioning the regime. And they also are anti-Putin as much as they are anti-Zelensky. By the way, they're trots, whatever that means.
Sure.
But they brought this article. Eric London actually is the guy who went after Savvy Sabs a while ago, and I'm not a big fan, but he does really good work when it comes to the UAW. He wrote this article about a week ago. UAW monitor investigating Shawn Fain and UAW leadership for misuse of funds and hiding documents. All right. We've been pretty critical of union leadership, and we haven't even really called them out on corruption other than their coziness with the Democratic Party or with political parties. But yesterday,
You okay?
we're
Okay.
fine. I still can't
Need
believe
coffee?
this shit. No,
Was that coffee?
it wasn't
Okay.
coffee. Yesterday, the federal court-appointed monitor in charge of overseeing the UAW bureaucracy issued a bombshell status report revealing that it's been conducting a growing investigation into ongoing systematic corruption within the administration of UAW President Shawn Fain, and that an investigation is underway against Fain personally for misuse of union resources. I'm going to repeat that because that seems vaguely important.
Is it?
Yesterday, the federal court-appointed monitor in charge of overseeing the UAW bureaucracy, let's start there. There's a federal court-appointed monitor in charge of overseeing UAW. Why are they? We're going to talk about that. They issued a bombshell status report. What did that bombshell say? That it's been conducting a growing investigation into ongoing systematic corruption within the administration of Joe Biden's buddy, UAW President Shawn Fain, and that an investigation is underway against him personally for misuse of union resources. How about that shit? So, what happened? I was waiting for it. The investigation includes accusations of corruption against Fain and the IEB by two leading members of the bureaucracy, Secretary-Treasurer Margaret Mock and Vice President Rich Boyer. Now, remember, we famously were talking about Rich Boyer in the UAW thing. Mock was sidelined and Boyer relieved of oversight over the union's Stellantis department. All right?
Oh, yeah.
All right? And
I remember that.
And both told the monitor that it was because they refused to authorize the misuse of union resources by Fain and the IEB. Again, this was about the auto workers strike where they did the stand-up strike. But in April, the monitor began investigating another IEB member, a regional director, after receiving allegations of potential embezzlement. I read this. I'm like, oh, I have to bring this. Holy shit. Nor do these appear to be isolated incidents as serious as they would be on their own. The monitor stresses the seriousness of the allegations and the high-level concern that the monitor witnessed throughout the union as a result of them. According to the monitor, the reaction of the bureaucracy to these initial reports has been to, of course, hide the evidence like a good Democrat. Quote, the union has
State Farm is there.
Right? The union has not cooperated in producing documents that are relevant to the investigation in a complete and timely manner, unquote. This has handicapped the monitor's lawyers' ability to properly question UAW leadership during interviews, forcing them to conduct those interviews without the benefit of the full production of potentially relevant and contemporaneous documents. The monitor went to great lengths to avoid bringing this information to public light, concerned over the anger that it would generate among rank-and-file auto workers. They tried to stop doing this. You basically left them no fucking choice. The report explains, quote, the monitor has attempted for months to garner the union's cooperation in gathering the information needed to conduct a full investigation, but the union has effectively slow-rolled the monitor's access to requested documents. I wonder why. It adds that the monitor...
Wonder why.
I wonder. It adds that the monitor has taken a collaborative posture with the UAW from the beginning of the monitorship. That's a problem right there. And that the monitor even gave a draft of the report to the UAW itself a full month before it went public on Monday. Why? This is a monitor. They work for us, not for UAW. According to a footnote, the monitor sent the report to UAW and its lawyers, quote, on May 10th, 2024, and requested their feedback. Evidently, that feedback was to start guarding the evidence, or worse. The monitor explains that it has requested 116,000 documents from the UAW leadership in the investigation in the new one, but that UAW has produced a very small portion, or approximately 2,600 documents, and with more than 80% of those documents produced only on June 6th, 4 days before the issuance of this report. They gave them nothing for months. Then at the last minute gave them a fucking taste. And finally the guy was like, all right, what do you want me to do? I got to go public. You call my bluff. So now I got to do this. Elsewhere in the report, it's scorching. The monitor writes that by early April 2024, the union had produced just 18 documents. The monitor details its polite attempts to assist in speeding the pace of production, but apparently these evidently all came to no avail. According to the monitor, the UAW has made three basic arguments to justify its efforts to block the investigation and bar the release of some 115,000 documents. All right, originally, the UAW claimed these documents could not be made public because they were subject to attorney-client privilege, because they were related to the UAW General Counsel's preparation of its response to the monitor's February 2024 document request. That's bullshit. Because in a footnote, the monitor explains that it offered the UAW a deal. It would exclude all such documents provided other documents related to potential corruption were handed over. They wouldn't do that either. This offer was rejected, as was the monitor's attempts to determine what other documents the union contemplates withholding. Yeah, unions are great, guys. Next, the UAW bureaucrats then argued that the 120,000 documents were privileged as relating to collective bargaining, which forced the monitor to remind the court that part of the government's investigation leading up to the consent decree involved allegations of corrupt payments made by Fiat Chrysler to senior union officials in order to undermine collective bargaining. So the whole reason there's a monitor in the first place is that UAW was caught accepting bribery payments. And they're not turning over emails by a monitor that was court-appointed, federally appointed, And they're saying, well, it's attorney-client privilege. And so then, according to another footnote, the UAW's lawyers argue that the monitor's power is limited to charging misconduct, but not extended to investigating suspected misconduct in aid of potential charges, which would make it impossible to ever uncover any wrongdoing. Of course. That's their idea. Right? Next, I got that one. The UAW monitor, the courts, and the Biden administration's Department of Labor have worked assiduously to protect and revamp the bureaucracy to better control the rank and file. I'm going to repeat that one again because that seems mildly important. Because this is literally like the definition of fascism, meaning the merger of the corporate and the government state. The UAW monitor, the courts, and the Biden administration's Department of Labor have worked assiduously to protect and revamp the UAW bureaucracy to better control the rank and file. Why are they trying to control the rank and file? Mack Trucks auto worker and socialist candidate for UAW President Will Lehman objected throughout the 2022 UAW elections that the votes of rank and file members and retirees were being suppressed by grossly inadequate notice of the election, a refusal by the union to maintain accurate records, and a communication system skewed in favor of the entrenched bureaucracy. When Lehman filed a lawsuit to demand an extended voting schedule and adequate notice for the rank and file in November of 2022, it was opposed by the monitor law firms and denied by the U.S. District Court judge. Why would they do that? Because they're all working together to fuck over big labor. As a result of this deliberate refusal to provide adequate notice, turnout in the first round of voting was only 9%. That's how Shawn Fain got elected, the lowest of any nationwide union election in American history. Both before and after the election, the monitor rejected Lehman's formal complaints of violations of democratic election requirements by the bureaucracy, often after long and unjustified delays. They ran the clock out on people all the time because they know that people are too busy to pay attention for long enough. These motherfuckers. When Lehman appealed the monitor's rejection of his complaints to the Biden administration's Department of Labor, the department delayed a decision until the last possible moment before, of course, rejecting Lehman's concerns on concocted procedural grounds. Lehman then responded, of course, by filing a lawsuit against the Department of Labor, arguing that its decisions were arbitrary and capricious. But, of course, that takes forever, and that lawsuit is still pending before Judge Lawson, same guy, was argued and fully briefed as of December 2023. We're just waiting on a ruling. Even though 6 months later, despite that usually taking about 6 weeks, they're still waiting 6 months plus. Still haven't ruled. Why? Because fuck you, that's why. They don't have to. Will Lehman says in a statement to World Socialist website, quote, "The revelations about the ongoing corruption within the Fain administration are proof that the bureaucracy cannot be reformed. It must be abolished. We, the rank and file, cannot put our faith in any figure within the bureaucracy, including somebody named Chris Smalls." And of course, that's another union and a whole other story, but the same thing. The bureaucracy is not going to put power back in our hands, nor will the courts, and we will have to take it ourselves. We confront poverty wages, mass firings, including at Stellantis. Which, by the way, that's what happened after they signed the UAW contract with the Big Three. You saw mass layoffs and dangerous conditions at work. A strike-breaking judge has ordered University of California academic workers to halt their walkout to defend the free speech of protesting students, and on June 6th, a 28-year-old UAW member named Dalton Simmers died when the molten metal fell on him at Caterpillar's foundry in Mapleton, Illinois. The same happened to workers like Stephen Dirks under Ray Curry. Since Fain's installation, things have only gotten worse. Quote, as for the ongoing investigation, we demand the public release of all the documents mentioned by the Monitor in its investigation. The Monitor says the UAW is illegally prohibiting release of 115,000 documents, potentially related to corruption, collaboration with management, and the misuse of dues? We have a right to that information, and there is no reason to keep it from us. The same goes for the over 2,000 documents the Monitor says it did receive. That information must be given to the rank and file. The whole court oversight and corporate monitorship of the UAW prove the process to be a total fraud. If there's going to be a change, we're going to have to make it ourselves. Will Lehman, man, he works for Mack Trucks. He's a UAW member. He's a leader. And he gives a shit about what happens there. And these are the people who give a shit about what happens at INN. And we love you for it. Support independent media, like I say all the time, because it's more important than ever. Because where else are you getting that story? We've got all of our wonderful supporters. You get a service. You get product for this. It's not a donation. It's not a crowdfunding. And we have to be careful now about how we say this. But we have supporters who appreciate the content that we provide on an ongoing daily, weekly basis. And we love you for it. Thank you so much. I love you all. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. Thank you. And we'll see you next week.
Yeah. Bye, fam. Keep listening to what little birds to tell you. Seeing you a bit.
No! We just fucking lost the stream.
Who are these people?
A doozy. Another one about the UAW and about labor unions and about how not all labor unions are wonderful. All right. Now, remember, we've been
children.
Yep. We've been covering that the UAW had to have a federal monitor because of all the corruption and that they had that the NLRB had to basically bust them up and they had officers go to jail, embezzling, all kinds of stuff was happening. So they Hi-ya is right, Uncle Roger. So weak. So this UAW monitor, 4 months, has been trying to get access to documents, work with them, and find out what the hell's going on about voting, about all kinds of things. But they're citing continuing culture of fear of retaliation in their latest status report. Oh, boy. So, again, this is from Shannon Jones over at World Socialist website. I know it's kind of hard to see, WSWS.org. I have my issues with some of their stuff, but as far as holding labor unions accountable, they are about the best that there is. Because they think that everybody's corrupt. And you know what? They're right. Nice. Gregory Walker, slide the tip in here. Come on, man. Family show, but yes, we do accept tips. Thank you. Yes, tips. Aha. Okay. Thanks. Hobo. Good to see you. All right. In a status report filed July 12th, the court-appointed UAW monitor, Neil Barofsky, cited a continuing culture of fear and retaliation within the UAW apparatus and noted widespread reports by staff of unethical behavior or misconduct within the union's leadership. Nothing to see here. Shawn Fain?
Nope.
Well, Shawn Fain's got nothing to say. While couched in diplomatic language, the monitor paints a picture of a corrupt UAW bureaucracy riven by factional infighting and resistant to implementing even the cosmetic reforms put in place by the monitor in the wake of a corruption scandal that sent 2 former UAW presidents to prison.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Yes, there is. The report follows...
See, felons are people too, Indy. God.
Yeah, we have to pay for them.
They're kind of grifters.
Yeah. Much more so than any of the podcasters that I know. But the report follows by less than 1 month the 9th status report in which Barofsky complained of lapses in compliance with monitor's oversight. That's very kind. In particular, the failure of the UAW leadership to provide thousands of requested documents related to misuse of union funds and other potentially criminal acts.
Yep.
Nothing to worry about here. All right. On July 8th, the Monitor filed a motion in federal court seeking to force the UAW to hand over documents he'd requested. The Monitor asserted in court filing that the UAW stonewalling made his office unable to effectively carry out his responsibility to remove fraud, corruption, illegal behavior, dishonesty, and unethical practices from the UAW. Why?
Now, Indy, I sent you something today.
It's because they don't want it removed. Oh, yes. Well,
what did I send you?
It's that
Tell the people what I sent you.
They're endorsing Cam already.
Uh-huh. Yep. She already put on the comfortable shoe for them. You know? So that's going to be fun. That's going to be great.
The Monitor's most recent filing cites the results of a cultural assessment conducted by a third-party internal audit that surveyed hundreds of UAW staff. It notes that of the approximately 100 union staff who reported that they witnessed unethical behavior or misconduct during the 12 months prior to the survey, over 30% said they did not report it. Why? All survey participants were asked why they wouldn't report it, and in response, over 40% said they would decline to report out of fear of retaliation. What do you mean? Calls to the Monitor's hotline have independently and repeatedly echoed these same concerns. Among the allegations the Monitor is investigating are instances of retaliation against Margaret Mock and Rich Boyer, which we've covered before. The latter was removed by Fain as the head of the union's Stellantis department. Boyer alleges that Fain asked for favors for his domestic partner and her sister that would have violated the UAW ethical practices codes and financial practices. Fain's fiance works for the UAW Chrysler National Training Center in Michigan. Fain previously was a co-director for the NTC, which has served for decades as a conduit for hundreds of millions of dollars in corporate cash into UAW coffers. Huh. This unseemly faction fight within the UAW leadership, along with allegations and counter-allegations of corrupt practices, comes as anger among rank-and-file workers is boiling over the 2023 contract betrayal, as well as the UAW's endorsement of genocide Joe Biden, and now, of course, Cam laughing clown Kamala. Last month, the union apparatus was barely able to contain a rebellion by 48,000 UAW academic workers in California who staged a political strike against the Gaza genocide and the brutal suppression of campus protests. They were barely able to contain a rebellion. Why should they? I don't want them to contain it.
We've got you surrounded.
At the same time, a federal judge recently ruled in favor of socialist rank-and-file Mack Trucks worker Will Lehman in his lawsuit against voter suppression in the sham 2022-23 election, which brought Fain to power in the first place, and the reformer ticket. Both the Monitor and the U.S. Department of Labor had sided with the UAW bureaucracy in attempting to block Lehman's complaint before from being considered on its merits, but not anymore, I don't believe. In a footnote to his report, the Monitor, Borofsky, acknowledged that the union's record-keeping practices were subject to several challenges by union members, in an oblique reference to Lehman's charges that the UAW refused to update members' mailing addresses so they could receive ballots to vote in the election. That was part of his detailed complaint that the UAW did as little as possible to inform members during the first ever direct elections of top union officers. That's really important, and I'm going to stop right there, because in the history of the Teamsters, I mean the UAW, it was only the Barnes, the captains and the leaders of the different locals that voted for union leadership. And there are like 160 locals, and they represent everybody that's part of that union. And a lot of times the union members would feel like their vote wasn't represented because how they felt was never recorded on the books because their barn or, their local didn't feel the same way and didn't vote the way they did. This gave them direct voice for the first time. And it scared the shit out of leadership because they didn't know what was going to happen. And, the last thing that leadership wants is an unpredictable vote. So they did what they had to rig it, according to Lehman, allegedly. And now it's still coming out in federal court that this is exactly what they did. All right. That Borowski seeks to dismiss Lehman's complaints by citing the Department of Labor's whitewash of the UAW bureaucracy. That's insane. He's working in cahoots with UAW leadership, the Federal Monitor. He's working against Will. Why? Yeah. Because I don't know why. Because he's getting stonewalled by the current administration. Lehman would at least come in and give him the transparency that he's looking for.
Shame. Shame.
Right?
Shame.
Shame. While pointing to a culture of fear and retaliation among bureaucrats within the UAW apparatus, the Monitor's report predictably says nothing about the overt lies and intimidation tactics used by the bureaucracy to ram through the 2023 Big Three agreement and other sellout contracts. This included promoting false claims that the supposed record contract, which contained pay raises that didn't even keep pace with inflation, guaranteed the promotion of temporary workers with more than 9 months' experience to full-time work. In fact, Stellantis and other auto companies started mass firings and layoffs shortly after the contracts were signed, and there was nothing that UAW could do about it.
Nothing.
Fain.
What do you want to do?
Fain then removed Boyer for... but what's crazy, Fain removed Boyer for dereliction of duty, alleging that he agreed to separate concessions, which have undermined the jobs and conditions of Stellantis workers. Boyer shot back. What? Yep. Boyer shot back with a widely circulated internal memo revealing that Fain and other executive board members were fully aware that the promises he and Fain made to temporary workers to sell the contract were lies. They tried to hang this guy out to dry, and he dragged the receipts right out and said, fuck you. If you're taking me down, I'm taking you all down with me. Nor did the Monitor note the strong-arm tactics that the UAW used to force through the contract at Mack Trucks in Macungie, Pennsylvania. All right, that's where Will works, I believe. Striking workers were told by the UAW leaders that they would be replaced by scabs and abandoned to their fate if they didn't vote to ratify a sellout deal that they had previously rejected. Seriously, this is crazy. The continuing revelations of UAW corruption make more urgent than ever the call by the International Workers Alliance of rank and file committees for new UAW elections under the control of rank and file. You would think that the workers would actually fight for this, but they don't either know or don't care enough to fight for it, apparently. I don't understand it. The aim of this would be to throw out the corrupt leadership and implement a radically new course aimed at putting power in the hands of the rank and file and abolishing the bureaucracy. Rank and file workers should also demand access for independent review of all the concealed UAW documents. Right?
Not the documents.
Oh, yeah. Referring to the recent moves by Fain to strip Mock and Boyer of key duties, the Monitor wrote, specifically, reports to the Monitor's hotline from union staff have cited the actions taken against the Secretary, Treasurer, and Vice President as driving retaliation fears that reporting alleged abuses might lead to retribution from the President's office. Wait, what was that again? Yes. If we say something, we might get in trouble. Yep, that's basically what they're saying. All right. Given the fragility of the union's cultural perception of retaliation, listen to all this corporal speak. All right. Whether they're appropriate or not, how recent these acts are, God almighty, it's just talking around this. How recent these acts are perceived by the union staff must be taken into account when tackling this persistent cultural challenge. Like, what? The monitor is just talking around himself.
Keep it secret. Keep it secret.
All right. The monitor also pointed to the decision by Fain to take over duties such as procurement. That's purchasing. All right. Formerly under Secretary Treasurer Mock's office, he cautioned that the charges risk diluting the role of Secretary Treasurer as a potential independent check on actions that pertain to financial approvals and oversight of expenditures. So now you're removing any kind of a check on the president's balance, right? And now, especially when it comes to spending money, the union must tread care.
Where's the money, Lebowski?
Again, this is a presidency that already got accused of embezzling $1 million plus. Not Shawn Fain, but somebody in that position. So now they're trying to loosen the chains so that he could do the same thing. What? Right?
Yeah.
So the union must tread carefully in removing the potential checks and balances on authority, especially those that concern financial matters, given the union's history of financial corruption, the cultural concerns still present at the union, and the relative nascency of its compliance program. Right. The fact that they're stonewalling, that they're not giving out any information, and they're trying to make this go away. The Monitor's report also recited a list of areas where the UAW was delaying implementing reforms that it had pledged to implement. For example, again, the Federal Monitor, Borofsky, said that little had been done to implement the UAW's new conference and events expense policy. No surprise. He cautions that in prior reports, the Monitor highlighted the need for additional oversight and scrutiny of union conference and event expenses. But of course, they're not being forthcoming. In addition to the above, the Monitor cited the union's foot dragging on establishing controls over procurement and vendor selection process, noting the record of union officials enriching themselves through kickbacks on union branded merch.
Okay.
Yep. Hey, UAW merch. Think about the amount of UAW members that buy UAW merch. That's not a little amount. All right. They want a little piece on everything. You know, it's like, ugh. He also expressed, again, nepotism, cronyism in hiring, right? That there was nothing done in procedures to reverse that practice. All of this only vindicates the warnings by Lehman that the replacement by one bureaucrat with another would do nothing to end the corrupt pro-company character of the UAW apparatus or empower the rank and file. Only the formation of new democratically controlled rank and file committees can transfer power to workers on the shop floor, which of course the union has no interest in doing. The union is directly at odds with the rank and file workers here, and they can claim that they're not. But why are they hiding all this from a Federal Monitor? The deepening crisis at the UAW apparatus takes place alongside the mounting turmoil in the Democratic Party after Biden's disastrous Democratic debate performance against Trump. All right, of course, we know Biden styles himself as the most pro-union president in history, and who recently called it the AFL-CIO his domestic NATO, meaning that they're Nazis too? No, bad. Has been endorsed by the UAW apparatus, and of course they're now endorsing Kamala, and Fain has been one of his most loyal promoters. However, with the Democratic campaign in freefall, a Reuters report cites a source that claims the UAW leadership met last week to discuss concerns about Biden's re-election chances and is considering its next options. Yeah, it sure did. It got in line. That's what it did.
You're done.
Right? So, whatever the truth of these assertions, the fact is that the UAW apparatus and the Democratic Party are deeply discredited in the eyes of workers for facilitating the Israeli genocide against Palestinians, supporting the ongoing U.S.-backed proxy war in Ukraine against Russia, and enforcing declining living standards and job cuts at home. Whatever the outcome in November, workers face an existential fight against the destruction of living standards and democratic rights at home and the threat of global war. Nothing fundamentally changes. They are interchangeable. It is a uniparty. It's crucial that workers take the measure of the UAW bureaucracy and prepare a rebellion to overthrow the union apparatus and transfer power to the workers themselves. I'd love to see that happen, like federally too, where we overthrow the federal government and transfer powers to the peoples themselves. But that's a whole other story.
Mm-hmm.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. Democracy simply doesn't work.
Well, it can, but not when it's corrupted by corporate interests and unlimited donor. But such a struggle must be based on the understanding that workers face a fight, not just against this or that employer or that employer, but against the entire capitalist setup, its political parties, the Democrats and Republicans, as well as the UAW servants of big business. So, oh man, I'm exhausted with these guys. WSWS does a good job. Somebody's got to call this stuff out, because I don't see anybody else talking about the UAW Federal Monitor except for in red states where it's an inconvenient thing where they're trying to gotcha the Democrats who have aligned with the union. But in a blue state, we don't hear about this at all, ever. We have to look for this. All right. All right. Woohoo! We have gotten to that portion of the program, folks. American Dad did a whole story on the gas mafia. Very funny, Cowboy Kitty. Yep. The Dems would do anything for unions as long as the unions vote with them. Yes. Totally agree, Cookies. Everybody, I guess,
they want to squash your strike, then they do that.
They quell protests, rig elections, elevate corporate-friendly presidents. Yeah, just like a Democrat should. I mean, yeah, it's really bad. What's the point of a union? Is that this is my problem with unions, is that they add a third middleman in there that has a completely different agenda from the individual worker. And that is the existence of the union.
Are reformist in nature.
But it's the existence of the union itself. It's the fact that it has to have a presence and an authority in the first place. That is the problem.
Well, you see, Indy, the thing is...
There's always the macro, and then there's the micro.
No, there's not. We support independent media. We are totally user-funded. We really appreciate the people that hang out in chat. They are the people that make this network and this channel what it is. And without you guys, we don't really exist. I mean, we would do this even if it was just us. We started out just us, but man, we need all that support that you can give us. So we really appreciate that. We got that QR code up there. We talked about this last week, but we're gonna have the Zago brothers create some cartoon art. They've gotten already about 15 Indie Media Award honorees they had done on this poster called Truth Tellers. Hey, how about that? IndieMediaAwards.substack.com. You can see the whole list. But those are the best of the best in independent media, from live streamers to journalists to outlets and video creators. We have a list with all of their links and ways to find and support them. And we're going to do something special this year. We teamed up with Zago Brothers to create cartoon illustrations of each Indie Media Award honoree, and even some people to represent some of the outlets we were trying to figure out what to do. And that's going to be a lot of fun. And so that's what the QR code and the Ko-fi is going to go towards, is supporting that with Zago and paying him for his time and for his work.
Who are these people?
Let's get to the UAW. Holy moly. Mike Elk from Payday Report is one of the better independent reporters out there. He's been doing this a long time, reporting on unions and reporting on rank and file worker perspective and their attempts to organize against the bosses. He tends to sometimes get a little rah-rah about the union leadership itself, but I think that he's really starting to figure it all out, especially about the UAW. And we've been talking a lot about Shawn Fain and the UAW and how the Federal Monitor has been charging them with withholding documents, but also with corruption. And now with last week we talked about how they were
corruption,
how they were punishing and potential that employees were afraid to speak out for fear of retaliation by senior management. All right, so now we hear that the federal monitor is investigating his purge of top allies while a convicted felon steers UAW legal. Wait, a convicted felon? Yeah, that's also happening. Huh? Yes, a convicted felon.
I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that.
So I want to...
Depending on what the felony is.
This article is long, I will say. It's broken up into 4 parts, and he's got it sectioned off. And we're going to go section by section, and we'll take a little break in between and talk about them because they're a little bit different for each one. Let's go back here. All right. First part is about the federal monitor. So he says this month, the UAW federal monitor, Neil Barofsky, accused the UAW, which is under a federal consent decree, of refusing to turn over documents regarding the demotion of UAW Secretary Treasurer Margaret Mock and UAW Vice President Rich Boyer. Again, this is the same thing that we've been talking about, that they blew the whistle and said that during the stand-up strike, they were making promises to the workers that they knew they weren't able to keep. All right. Payday Report has now learned that UAW President Shawn Fain's top legal advisor, Nathaniel Charney, is a convicted felon who pleaded guilty to obstruction of justice charges for hiding information regarding embezzlement in the Teamsters in the 1990s. 25 years later, Charney and his legal team are accused again of hiding information from the union's membership. Do we see a pattern here?
As we always do.
The Federal Monitor seeks to obtain thousands of internal union emails regarding the purge of some UAW President Shawn Fain's top allies, including, like we said, Secretary of Treasurer Margaret Mock and VP of Stellantis Rich Boyer, but of course the UAW has resisted. A court-ordered confidential survey of several hundred UAW staffers showed that 40% of the UAW staffers feared retaliation if they spoke about problems within the UAW. Again, we covered this last week. Borowski, who won praise from many progressives for his role as the special inspector for TARP, which, if you remember, was that, just after the bailouts in the 2008 congressional thing, they had him as a special inspector to make sure that the money was being paid back or being used appropriately. Right? That was during the Obama administration. He's facing a smear attack from Ryan Grimm. You know Ryan Grimm?
Oh. Unfortunately.
Autopilot.
I'd like to not.
Previously of The Intercept.
Sunshine of the spotless mind, that'd be nice.
Currently of Breaking Points, or whatever his Breaking the Point, or whatever his stupid show is over there, on top of, here you go, Counterpoint. He's going to mention that. Now he just launched his own, recently launched his own publication, Drop Site News with Jeremy Scahill. I've got a lot to say about that too. We can talk about it. We're going to cover that in another night. But Grimm is a progressive superstar with over 350,000 followers on Twitter and is the host of the hit web show Counterpoint, which has over 1 million subscribers on YouTube. That's not really fair.
Can you stop embarrassing yourself?
That's not really fair to say because Counterpoint doesn't have 1 million. Breaking Points does.
No.
And Counterpoint is a Friday afternoon show or something, a one show out of the entire network that they claim. Now, Grimm recently won praise for questioning the New York Times reporting on sexual assaults committed by Hamas during its attack on October 7th, 2 months after the gray zone and
like
Zay
8 months late.
Right?
Right.
Now, he's used his perch as a respected journalist to run a hit job accusing Neil Barofsky, who's Jewish, of having a secret Zionist agenda in his role as the UAW's federal monitor. The union has called for a ceasefire in Gaza. However, this is very important. Nowhere in Ryan Grimm's reporting on UAW's Federal Monitor has he disclosed that his managing editor and co-founder of Dropsite News, Nausicaa Renner, is married to the director of the UAW Communications, Jonah Furman. We've actually read several Jonah Furman articles on this show. Jonah used to have his own publication called Who Gets the Bird. He reported on labor news. He reported for labor news, literally. And then he got hired by Teamsters for a Democratic Union, I believe. And he started pushing Teamster propaganda. And he sold the shitty UPS deal for the Teamsters to their membership on the quote unquote left, claiming that it was a win. We debunked all of that crap in real time. Mm-hmm. Let me continue. Furman controls the UAW's multi-million-dollar media budget, and is a powerful figure within the labor movement. He's given work to scores of progressive videographers and communicators, and used the power of the UAW's vast social media space to make the work of their preferred journalists go viral. He's never done that for us, I can tell you right now. Now, through interviews with UAW members, legal experts, and a review of legal documents, Payday reporters learned that Grimm's reporting, based on one anonymous source, is not accurate. Go figure. In our 16-month-long investigation, Payday Report has discovered a troubling and well-documented pattern of intimidation and retaliation against those who speak up against misconduct in the UAW. I don't think that's any surprise to us. All right. Unbelievable. At a time when the UAW is taking a major setback following the defeat of the union drive at the Mercedes plant in Alabama, this expose by Payday Report raises troubling questions about the dysfunctionality and abuse of employees within the UAW by the Fain administration. Remember, these mostly are employees of the big three. They're not even employees necessarily of just the UAW. He says, in quote, in the words of union employees, that internal audit reported to be representative of this cohort, the union needs to end the toxic idea that fear is a motivator, correct the retaliation, and remove the culture of fear of retribution at the union. And that's what Borowski wrote himself. Okay, he's a Federal Monitor, and he's there. And look, the Biden administration is tongue bathing, having a big tongue kiss right now with the UAW leadership. We know this. They're totally in bed with Shawn Fain. So for one of their monitors, federally appointed, to be saying this, that's got to be real problems, okay? So what the hell is going on? But we knew that he had purged 3 top quote-unquote allies that had flipped on him, all right, because they had seen what he was doing corruption-wise, Shawn Fain, and they were trying to let the membership know. All right. So
yep.
let me.
I'm sure they got rewarded for their courage.
Yeah, let me stop there. Yeah, because everyone says they can't stand Ryan Grimm. Hi, Heidi Benner. Good to see you. Yep. He didn't get a Grimm job yet, but we're going to get one. Oh, boy. Juan Guaido showing up in chat. I don't think that's the same Juan Guaido that is it? That doesn't look like the same guy. Ryan Grimm definitely might be cutting his own hair. I think that's a rug, honestly. I don't even think that's his own hair anyway. Right. Anyway, let's get back to what Shawn Fain is doing in purging his allies. Oh, you know what? Before we did that, I wanted to drop this real quick. That anyone that could potentially help us support independent media, we really appreciate it. We are going to be raising money toward supporting the Zago brothers for the next couple of months, toward their independent cartoon art for representing all the Indie Media Award honorees. We're going to be releasing that probably when we do the 2024 awards later this year. I already have some of the art, and it looks incredible. I can't wait for everyone else to see it. But Lucio's got a bunch to still work on, so we're going to wait for him to finish. All right. Shout out to Zago Brothers. If you're not following at ZAGO Brothers on Twitter, give them a follow. They're also on Instagram. Just start searching ZAGO. You'll find them. So, oh my goodness. I'm doing a show with autopilot. No. What the hell? Thanks, OBS. Really appreciate that. Thanks, OBS. So you got to, Shawn Fain has purged 3 top allies. We know. Again, we've mentioned Margaret Mock, who was a Secretary of Treasurer. They stripped her of her responsibility overseeing various projects and departments in the UAW, right? That was in February that they had announced this. 2 years earlier, Fain, a white Bible-quoting factory worker from rural Indiana, had tapped Mock, a black auto worker from Detroit, to be his running mate. During the campaign, incumbent UAW president Ray Curry, a black man from North Carolina, made issues of Fain being white. So, Mock's inclusion as a black woman undoubtedly helped Fain's ticket win narrowly, with only 483 votes cast out of a total of 136,485 votes from the potential UAW rank and file. Wait, what? Yep. Less than a year after serving as Fain's running mate, again, the lowest attended and the lowest turnout of any union in the history of the United States. Less than a year after serving as Fain's running mate, her demotion shocked many, particularly black union members who constitute approximately 25% of the UAW's membership. So, a concerned UAW member says that without Margaret Mock, there's no way that Fain beats Curry, and it's shocking that no one has clear answers about what's happening. Well, we kind of know what's happening, right? In the wake of a federal scandal that saw many top UAW officers go to jail on charges of embezzlement, bribery, and self-enrichment, Mock implemented an open bid process that made the union's financial spending practices more transparent and tried to move the UAW away from a system of political patronage that has existed in the union for many decades. Away from a system of political patronage. Okay, do you hear those words? Remember those words.
That sounds nice to me.
But her new accountability measures angered Fain, who successfully sought to have her demoted in February, claiming that she was hindering the UAW's ability to quickly spend money on key organizing projects.
Where's the money, Lebowski?
Yeah, right. After her demotion, Mock filed a complaint with federal monitor Neil Borowski to investigate. And as she should, right? She said in a statement to the Detroit Free Press, quote, "When policies are established by the UAW International Executive Board and or by the special monitor ordered by the court to oversee the UAW and or by federal agencies, it's my responsibility when these policies concern UAW finances to diligently make sure these policies are adhered to." Makes sense, right? While it saddens me even further that I get criticized, attacked, and retaliated against because I insist on the policies that are in place be adhered to, I will not waver in enforcing financial policies intended to protect our members' sacred dues dollars. Well, demoted at least. No, worse. They didn't fire her. They tried to manage her out so that she would quit. As part of that federal consent decree, the federal judge, as a reminder, appointed Neil Borowski to be the federal monitor of the UAW in 2021. Why? Because they got indicted for embezzling $1 million. I believe it was Ray Curry himself. Under the federal consent decree, Borowski has the right to demand emails about internal decision-making over spending matters and publish the information in regular reports. UAW members read the reports religiously as they debate the union's tactics and strategies. Union members were clamoring for more information about what was happening to the top leaders. Quote, the head of the UAW removing the VP, that's huge. And that's a UAW union president. That's Eric Fleming. He told Detroit News, there's confusion on the plant floor. As you should. Right? Margaret Mock requested that Borowski investigate these matters and publish independent findings so that rank-and-file UAW members could have a clear idea of the feud between the union's elected leaders. Because we all also know that in addition to Mock being demoted, and we've reported on this, we reported on this last month, UAW's VP for Stellantis workers, Rich Boyer, was also removed from office for dereliction of duty, as Fain told union members last May, except after reaching deals with Ford and GM during the stand-up strike, nonsense, the union rushed to reach a deal with Stellantis as well. The quickly reached deal agreed to controversial language that has resulted in the layoffs of thousands of Stellantis temporary workers. Now, as the summer progressed and layoffs intensified at Stellantis, Boyer faced criticism from UAW leadership. Now, he claims that Fain and his senior staff, including Benjamin Dichter, who's a lawyer, and Chris Brooks, they were aware and pushed the deal by the UAW at Stellantis, that all UAW was in on this and pushed it. It wasn't him. He says, your action against me implies, and he wrote this open letter. Damn, he burned it all down. He just let it all, he spilled all the tea. I love it. Your action against me implies that your staff had no visibility or involvement in our discussions during the 2023 negotiations with Stellantis? It's unreal. He says, that was a blatant lie, insult, and a personal attack on my credibility. Right?
That was a lie.
That was a lie, sir. Boyer says that he had opposed several of Fain's spending decisions. Right? In particular, he had opposed his attempt to give his romantic partner and her sister an enhanced early retirement as part of their leaving the joint UAW Chrysler National Training Center.
Bro, enhanced early retirement is like what you can get prescribed in Canada. All right? That does not not at the
UAW.
Great.
No, what you get is a very nice package, a financial package to walk away from the company.
Package. I see.
Yeah. 50,000, a year or two's worth of salary plus benefits and pension and all kinds of goodies to walk away at this point. And then you're free to go do whatever the hell you want and earn another income if you want. There's nothing stopping you. Right? So when running against UAW incumbent President Ray Curry in 2022, remember that Will Lehman from WSWS also was running from Socialist Party, and he's now still suing them in federal court, and he won a lawsuit about this because they were stonewalling him for being able to communicate with the membership about his candidacy. It was crazy. They just wanted to make sure, like this, duopoly. It had to either be incumbent. No, it wasn't Curry that did the corruption. It was the one before Ray Curry. He replaced them. But
what about Steph Curry?
It might have been. No, he's a basketball player. Sports. But when he was running against Ray Curry in 2022, Fain and his allies heavily criticized the practice of keeping relatives and romantic partners on the union payroll. And then he did the same thing. They attacked the previous union president, Rory Gamble, for having his son employed at the center. Right? And that's that National Training Center for UAW Chrysler. Penn Union.
It's like a lot of Company Inc.
It is. Penn Union.
Yeah.
But it's not Company Inc. It's Union and Company Inc. Remember, it's a third-party broker intervening that isn't just representing the workers at Chrysler. They're representing a lot more people, and they have their own interests and priorities. And it ain't necessarily the workers at Stellantis overall. Right? But 10 Union and 3 Fiat Chrysler executives have been charged with using center funds to finance their lavish lifestyles, and some are already in jail. That's what Chris Brooks had written in 2019. That's who was mentioned earlier. But of course, the center served another purpose as a source of jobs, including sham jobs for friends and family of union officials. And then Fain turns around and does the same thing 4 years later. Really? As people within the UAW raised questions about the employment of Fain's romantic partner and her sister, talks began about how to figure out a way for the two to leave the union. As part of the negotiations, Fain requested that his partner and her sister receive an enhanced retirement package so that they could retire early. To avoid having the enhanced early retirement package raise regulators' eyebrows, he then requested that every worker at the training center get the same bump, a provision that Boyer objected to as being too costly. So basically, he wants to give everyone a raise so that his girlfriend and her sister could get raises on the way out and get a better severance on the way out. All right? That's
sure.
And
Boyer sounds like.
And Boyer said, no, that's crazy. I'm the Chrysler rep. That doesn't make any financial sense to UAW. Now, I always want to see people get paid more, but not if it's because the guy wants his girlfriend and her sister to get paid more on the way out. That's kind of messed up, right? And maybe it's not. And I'm guessing they did this anyway because they fired Boyer. The demotion of Fain's running mate and top vice president in Stellantis continues a troubling pattern of Fain purging his top allies when they don't agree with him.
Yeah.
Apparently, I've been accused of the same thing here at INN, but I don't run a major union, so fuck all that. We run a little shitty YouTube channel. In March of 2023, Payday Report obtained documents showing that Fain had already fired his previously handpicked chief of staff and most of his previously chosen top senior staffers. I think that's because they knew all about what he was all about. The mass firings came after Rio and then top Fain staffers raised concerns about the top-down approach of a controversial Brooklyn-based union consultant, Chris Brooks. After other staffers raised similar concerns, Fain also fired several top allies, and I'm not going to name them because there's like 5 of them, but later Susan Pratt, another one, a 6th, chose to resign in solidarity with them. Rio addressed concerns regarding the dismissal of Fain's previously selected senior leadership team and its implication for the UAW reform movement in a 5-page memo written February 22nd after his dismissal last year. And there was a story in Payday Report last year about that. And Mike covered that. That's what he was trying to say, because Mike's good. All right. Fain's senior top staffers had expressed their concern about naming an inexperienced, white, social media savvy former labor writer to a top leadership position within the very racially diverse UAW. Feels, man. Vibes and feels. The union's previous incumbent president, Ray Curry, is also a 58-year-old black man from North Carolina. I don't know why race really... Right. Not that there's anything, I don't know why race is playing into this at all, but I'm guessing that Mike's going to get to that. Payday Report obtained a 5-page memo in which Rio voiced similar concerns that Brooks, a longtime Brooklyn-based union consultant, routinely downplayed and short-shrifted the perspectives of black workers. That's why. Furthermore, the group of close Fain allies expressed deep concerns that Brooks, who Fain has chosen as his right-hand man despite never having worked for the UAW or been a member of a UAW bargaining unit, operated in a style that could severely hurt the UAW reform movement. Because that's the plan, guys. In June of 2020, Brooks drew heavy criticism when he dismissed the possibility that Black Lives Matter was inspiring a massive upsurge of strike activities in the early stages of the pandemic. I think it might have been the pandemic, too. It wasn't just BLM.
Which they should have been doing.
100%.
Like, I like how they're like, oh, God, we can't have more strikes. You're a union. People want to do it. do it.
Well, no, nobody
I don't
wants
get
to
why
not
that's
work and
hard.
earn money and earn $500 a week strike pay, but they want to hold the
Yeah, but
bosses
they're-
accountable and
they're
earn
saying
more.
that
Yes, they're voting
the
to
ac-
you. Yep.
The activity was like people were wanting to do that.
Yep.
You know, like they saw what was happening in the streets already. They're like, we can do that. You know,
Sure.
You're already losing a lot of work from pandemic. Like, you know,
Well, as he says,
I just find it crazy that that was like a sticking point for them.
yes, it is.
You
It
know?
is crazy. Brooks's comments led many black leaders to criticize him as racially tone deaf for saying that. Again, saying that Black Lives Matter was dismissing the possibility that BLM was inspiring an upsurge of strike activity.
Right.
So
Yeah.
he said, my concerns and the concerns shared by the team members listed above are that Chris has assumed a role in the transition and in your future administration that he does not possess the experience or personal maturity to carry out. You're talking about representing hundreds of thousands of workers nationwide, right? In a short time, his lack of transparency, his need for control over departmental discussions, that's weird micromanagement, his need to control access to you, and his apparent lack of ability to work in a real collaborative manner became apparent. So after Rio and his allies left Fain's transition team, right, Chris Brooks proposed that the union engage in the purges of staffers in the union that was narrowly divided during the union's presidential election in 2023. Brooks suggested that UAW leadership investigate its workforce to see who was loyal. He wants a Gestapo, is what he's looking for. Okay?
Sure.
He says, ID those who we can work with, move the program, ID those who need to be purged, he wrote in an email obtained by the Detroit Free Press last year. That's the paper of record in Detroit. Gannett owned. The demotion of the UAW's black secretary-treasurer, Margaret Mock, brought again back to the surface a feeling of uneasiness among union members, particularly black union members, because in court documents, Borowski is now charging the UAW with failing to turn over information about Fain's purge of his allies. Did somebody say some racist shit in those emails and they don't want to turn them over to a federal monitor? Could that possibly be happening here?
Tired of hearing about your damn emails.
Again, Neil, we're going to hear from Neil Borowski again. In court documents last month, as of the date of this report, we said more than 3 months after a monitor's initial document request, the union has produced a very small portion, only 2,600, of the current potentially relevant pool of approximately 116,000 intentionally, and with more than 80% of those documents only produced days before the issuance of this report. There has been a similar lack of production for the monitor's embezzlement investigation into one of the union's regional directors. What? Yes, they're stonewalling all over the place. Because what happened? The union has justified its delays by advancing arguments that the decisions regarding Mock's demotion were privileged information. It's classified. I can't tell you. That's privileged. Steeped in privilege, right? However, both the Justice Department, which is overseeing the consent decree of the UAW, and the Federal Monitor have rejected this argument. So they've already been ordered to do this, and yet they're just not. If access is given to the documents, it could hurt Fain politically within the union, giving the Fain administration a motive to conceal them. Yes. All right. Borowski's Federal Monitor reports paint a troubling picture within the UAW of union staffers and leaders frustrated by Fain's quest to consolidate his power base and purge union leaders that he sees as, again, disloyal. Again, these are people that call Trump authoritarian. They call Trump a Hitler dictator. Listen to what's going on here. Anyone that has any type of dissenting opinion is purged.
You see, we're a family here.
Yeah.
You gotta be loyal to the family.
Crazy.
Forget about it.
A recent culture assessment conducted by the union's internal audit function uncovered remnants of that culture still at the union. On the one hand, there were several positive aspects of the culture assessment, with most union staff members reporting that they feel a strong sense of mission and purpose, driven employment, gain a sense of personal fulfillment from their work, and feel motivated and inspired by the UAW's identity in spite of Shawn Fain and all of this. All right. However, while the UAW and its telegenic president, Shawn Fain, were getting good press, a survey of hundreds of UAW staffers conducted by the Monitor's office showed that feelings within the UAW were also very troubling. And he says, based on hundreds of anonymous survey responses, the culture assessment also found divisions and silos within the union that are negatively impacting the union's culture. For example, the survey revealed that a concerning number of union personnel continued to fear retaliation if they were to report misconduct, and that many harbor the same kinds of concerns that were present at the start of the monitorship. Start of the monitorship being 2019, I believe. Borofsky's 124-page report was sent to the UAW's 300,000 members and widely read. For many union members, it raised deep questions about Fain's purge within the UAW. This was the first time a lot of them were even hearing about this. Quote, although the Monitor will make no judgment on whether the actions of the president were appropriate until after he concludes the investigation described in the Monitor's 9th status report, these events have been perceived by union staff that has already had significant concerns about a culture of fear of retribution as confirmation that even the highest ranked union officials can be subject to retaliation, wrote Borofsky in July. Yeah, no one is safe. If you're standing next to Fain and you question him, he's going to cut you out because we know that he really works for the Democratic Party. So the minute you start questioning the Democratic Party or their methods or the donors, you're out. Specifically, reports to the Monitor's hotline from union staff have cited the actions taken against the Secretary-Treasurer and Vice President as driving retaliation fears that reporting alleged abuses might lead to retribution from the president's office. Not might lead to? No, did lead to. Given the fragility of the union's cultural perception of retaliation, whether they were appropriate or not, how these recent acts are perceived by the union staff must be taken into account when tackling this persistent cultural challenge. One longtime UAW leader joked with me that Fain was like Walter Reuther, both in a good and bad way. You got to remember that Reuther purged a lot of people. I don't know who Walter Reuther is.
People who don't know who is Walter Reuther?
I don't know. So
okay.
I'm guessing that he was an old UAW person.
I'll do a Google.
Yes, please look that up for me. Confidential data from surveys.
Last name,
R-E-U-T-H-E-R. R-E-U-T-H-E-R.
American Civil Rights Activists.
Aha. Okay.
Organized labor and civil rights activists who put the United Automobile Workers into one of the most progressive labor unions in America.
He was a former UAW union head. That's what I figured.
Yeah.
Right. Confidential data from the surveys of several hundred UAW staff conducted by the Monitor found a deep culture of fear within the UAW. Again, in the words of union employees, that internal audit reported to be representative of this cohort, the union needs to end the toxic idea that fear is a motivator, correct the retaliation, and remove the culture of fear and retribution at the union, wrote Borofsky last month in that report. And that's federally publicly available. That was written for us. We paid for that as Americans. The data gathered during the survey underscores the widespread nature of the concerns of these staff members. For example, of the approximately 100 union staff who reported that they witnessed unethical behavior or misconduct, we again covered this last week, during that 12 months, over 30% said they didn't report it, and all survey participants were asked why they didn't report it, and 40% of them said they declined to report it out of fear of retaliation. Calls to the Monitor's hotline have independently and repeatedly echoed the same concerns. Like, he's not making it up. This is happening systemically and frequently and across the board. Borowski had written that both Fain's secretary-treasurer and vice president for Stellantis complained that they were removed from their assignments within the union because they wouldn't go along with spending requests from the UAW. Spending requests being the raises for Fain's girlfriend and her sister, which then would take into effect not just for them, but for everyone that had that title, which would have been a lot more money. The demotions had a chilling effect on the debate within the union. That specifically reports to the Monitor's hotline from union staff have cited the actions taken against Secretary Treasurer and VP as driving retaliation fears that reporting alleged abuses might lead to retribution from the president's office, because he'll figure out where it came from. He says, given the fragility of the union's cultural perception of retaliation, whether they were appropriate or not, how these recent acts were perceived by the union staff must be taken into account, like we said, when tackling this persistent cultural challenge. I think I read that before. All right. There's a lot more to this, too. And this is, like I said, Mike goes deep on this one, and he talks a lot about several different problems that all stem from one specific guy, Shawn Fain. Now, they rigged, I'll be the one to make that accusation that somehow that election for him was rigged. They didn't send out the ballots to anyone. It was the first time the entire UAW membership, not just the Barnes and the captains, were given the ability to vote at the union. All right. And they didn't let anybody know, and they didn't tell anyone who was running. Again, 483 votes, 133,000 members. And I think there's even more than that.
This is the most election of our lifetime.
Well, they love appointing candidates. That's what the Democrats do, right? How is this different from an insurance company? You're right, Anna. They pay in their dues, not insurance, in case shit happens, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yes. So the United Auto Workers, UAW is the United Auto Workers. They're the ones that work for all the car companies. But UAW also has a lot of other union members that are not working for the for one of the big three auto workers. They actually just recently unionized a plant in, was it for Audi or for Volkswagen? They just won one for Volkswagen in Tennessee, and they lost one for Mercedes in Alabama. But there was a little bit of monkey business there too. CBC voter, good to see you. All right. Team Orca, I used to be a statistician of sorts. The amount of employer on employee violence is significantly higher than you would think. You bet. Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Anna. If our channel was, well, we do have a shitty little, it's not a shitty little channel, but it's a little channel nonetheless. Nobody's worried about our little channel, was really what I meant to say. But senior leadership was a toddler. He still is a toddler right now. Ghost Start is breaking news that Bezalel Smotrich orders the confiscation of 100 million shekels from the Palestinian Authority to compensate the Israeli families of those killed in the operation on October 7th. Ugh. Oh, boy.
What a fucking...
Okay. Anna Mayers, UAW has come to seem like a giant grift, and that's putting it mildly. Well, they're a protection racket is what they are. All right. And they're not even a very good one because they're not protecting their base. They're more in cahoots with the boss. than they are with the workers. All right. Yeah. You had one job and exactly they couldn't do it. All right. Go start. 60,000 Americans live in illegal Jewish settlements in the West Bank. All right. As well as 23,400 Americans. Oh, I guess it's cutting off. That's weird. Let me fix that. 23,400 Americans. There we go. Hey, serving in the Israeli army. Wow, 23,000 Americans serving in the army. Many are posting videos on social media showing them committing war crimes, and I hope they're prosecuted when they come back home. As they should. As they should. As Kit Cabello would say. Shout out to our friend Kit. All right. Topher
Is that your excuse for a Chicagan accent?
I wouldn't even call that Chicago, but Topher over on Kick. Oh no, he moved over to YouTube. Good to see you, Topher, over there. UAW hides stuff like Kamala's DA office. Very funny. Very true. The mafia would be preferable to the UAW. I think, be shame if something happened to your nice little job there. That's right. All right. I don't know if you have any of the John Deere story in here. I don't have the John Deere story, but I know that they're also got screwed over. We reported on John Deere 2 years ago and how mad they were at what the UAW did.
Hoffa was breaking kneecaps, people.
Yes, he was. That's Teamsters. But that's union. That's union leadership. Difference. And also not just John Deere. Also, UAW was Carrier, I believe. Carrier workers are UAW, and there was one other one I'm thinking of that just slipped my mind that we were talking about, UAW members. And then, of course, there's the ones, the workers in California, that school workers are aligned with UAW. All right. Now it's Hurricane Debbie. Is that what they're calling it now? All right. Yeah. And then we got Fall Gators for Kit. I'm retired. Union deep dives don't interest me. Okay, as long as I make my money next Friday. Next Friday coming, I didn't get the rent, and out the door I went. Yeah, speaking of paying the rent and out the door I went, if you can support independent media and support our project for the Indie Media Awards to provide cartoon illustrations for all of the Indie Media Award honorees of their faces. And we'll do some really cool stuff with that. Zago's excited. He's seen some of the stuff that we're putting together, some of the artwork and some of the ways to incorporate that. We might put them into shirts. I don't know. It depends. We're going to have to get permission from the people themselves to use their face and their impression on a shirt and figure out how that might work. But we'll certainly make that available to everyone. And it'll be available at indiemediaawards.substack.com. You'll see all of them there at some point. So
here we got Longshoreman Union in the house. Look at them.
Nice.
Look at them doing it.
Good shit.
The Longshoremen.
So, like I said, we're going to continue on what's happening in the UAW, and that the Bernie Bros from Brooklyn are pushing out the rank and file from the UAW communications office. This is another problem that's happening at the UAW. One person.
The Bernie Bros from Brooklyn.
This is, again, Mike Elk.
Big, bad.
Go ahead.
It was just very alliterative. My apologies.
Big, bad Bernie Bros from Brooklyn. That's right. This is Mike Elk from Payday Report, paydayreport.com. Not .org, but I believe it's nonprofit. It's tax deductible if you donate there. But what he's talking about is in the communications office at UAW, one person who found their political patronage system threatened by Margaret Mock's open process is UAW Communications Director Jonah Furman, who controls the union's multi-million-dollar budget. Again, we talked a little bit about Furman earlier. Jonah Furman is a DC-based union consultant who had previously worked as the top labor liaison for the Bernie Sanders campaign and at Labor Notes. All right. He also has his own Substack, whogetsthebird.substack.com.
Coming to a Substack newsletter near you.
I knew she was coming. She's going to open one at some point. Rachel Maddow is coming to a Substack near you at some point. I promise. With over 60...
Coming to a Substack newsletter near you.
See, she just announced it right now. With over 60,000 Twitter followers, Furman, like we said, is a social media powerhouse and commands a legion of labor fans who have turned Fain into the most famous labor leader in the country. Well, him and Sean O'Brien both. However...
Yeah, and I also don't know about famous, but sure, you know, whatever.
Infamous, famous, El Guapo.
Yeah.
Do you know what that word means? Anyway.
I mean, Chris is apparently chopped liver, I guess. But, you know.
Well, he's also unemployed at this point, I believe. But, however.
I'm sure. Well, yeah.
Members of the UAW's Local Union Communication Association, who is UAW Luca, complained that Furman was turning away from previous hires from the rank and file of UAW to hire Beltway-connected consultants, hiring many of the talented content makers of the Bernie campaign. The hires paid off and made Fain a household name, but rank and file UAW members felt left excluded. Wow, this is an argument that we've been making for 3 years, that there is no representation of the rank and file workers coming out of any PR department from any organized union. The Teamsters are starting to do it a little bit. Amazon Labor Union did it for about 5 minutes and then they stopped. Hopefully they may pick it up again, but we'll see what happens there. The latest round of hiring for the International UAW Communications Department is to be filled with all candidates that are non-UAW candidates. Why? Bringing the department to a ratio where less than half of the staff was UAW before entering the department, wrote the rank and file members in a leaked petition obtained by Payday Report. I wonder how he got that. This group of UAW local leaders signing it include Jesse Kelly of UAW 160 and Luigi Gukal and 5 or 6 others, all right, of different locals. Quote, we the undersigned of UAW Luca representatives petition a meeting with Jonah Furman. They just have to put out a petition to even ask for a meeting to discuss the recent decision and direction of the department to cease to use content that is created by rank and file UAW members until the International UAW Communications Department is represented by a majority of staff who were UAW members prior to accepting the role in the department. How are you supposed to represent the members if you never worked there? Don't even know them. Interact with them. With Fain facing increasing pressure from within the UAW and complaints that they lost a high-profile UAW election in Alabama over a digital media heavy and organizing light model, he has increasingly relied on Furman to work his contacts in the press. We know about this. In June, federal monitor Neil Borowski filed a complaint in court asking a federal judge to order the UAW to hand over more documents. A rash of, all of a sudden, negative headlines appeared about the UAW. Then, a story relying on one anonymous source appeared accusing Borowski, like we said, who had served as a monitor investigating Credit Suisse for hiding Nazi money, of having a Zionist bias. The UAW social monitor and social media influencer allies kicked into higher gear to brand Borowski as a Zionist, one who was upset over the UAW's position on Gaza and was retaliating by investigating Fain's controversial purges. Guess who he called?
Okay.
Guess who he called? We'll get to that in a minute. Who did Jonah Furman call? He had friends in the independent press. The reporting mentioned nothing about the court-ordered survey of hundreds of UAW employees that showed widespread fear of Fain's purges of allies suspected of disloyalty. Of course, that never was mentioned. Look at the beginning of the next paragraph. Ryan Grimm, the author of the viral hit piece that relied on a single anonymous source, which might have been Jonah Furman's wife for all we know, failed to mention one key point, that his top editor was married to Jonah Furman. That might be a conflict of interest. Slightly.
It might be.
Now, On top of all of that, the ADL threatens the UAW with an anti-BDS lawsuit. I love this. So, the UAW, has called for an end to the siege in Gaza. They want, they called for a ceasefire very tepidly while endorsing the Democrats and not really calling for it. But the rank and file membership certainly wants it to stop. I mean, we've certainly seen that.
Even calling for it at this point, like we've talked about this. We've had these discussions. Ceasefire is like the bare minimum half measure.
Yep.
Like, like it's almost like you could just say that, but they're not calling for like single Palestinian liberated state, clearly. Like,
no,
but
definitely
sure.
not. Democratic, independent, non-secular return to the people that were running it before 1948 state. Because the whole thing was, that's a whole other story. Let's look into, you can look into exactly what that story is before. But anyway, getting back to the article, that the ADL threatened the UAW with an anti-BDS lawsuit. Wait, what? Yes, well, the ADL is hysterical and crazy. Jonathan Greenblatt, we know all about the ADL and how much influence they actually have over corporate media, right? And over
whole segments on it.
Yes, they literally accuse everyone of what is it? Being antiseptic, right?
Racism and antisepticism and
so
all that jazz.
In early July, Ryan Grimm, autopilot, left The Intercept and launched a new nonprofit site called Drop Site News with famed Intercept founder Jeremy Scahill. Thank you, Otto. I'm now doing the show with autopilot, if everyone didn't know that's on the podcast. The site's first viral article was entitled, and they launched this thing, quote, "The UAW's Federal Monitor twice pressured the union to back off its call for a Gaza ceasefire, then launched an investigation." That's such crap. Grimm thinks he's got a big scoop, wrote, "Borowski's pursuit of Fain has less to do with concerns over union self-dealing and has more to do with the politics of Israel-Palestine." Maybe he was covering for his editor's husband? I don't know. Stop trying to hide Reef, Otto. Come on. Grimm wrote, "Borowski's pursuit of Fain has less to do, like he said, with concerns over union self-dealing and more to do with the politics of Israel-Palestine." Bullshit. Bullshit, Ryan Grimm. I call bullshit. As his evidence, Autopilot presented a potential legal threat issued by Jonathan Greenblatt and the hysterical Zionist ADL against the UAW's Local 7092 at NYU and the New School. Remember, we covered that. UAW activists at the schools had been calling for BDS against Israel for the ongoing campaign of genocide that Israel has pursued in Gaza. Mike Elk is also Jewish, by the way. Thank goodness. For the Jews like us that stand up and stand against what's going on there. As he says, New York State's first in the nation anti-BDS law requires state and local governments to divest from any group engaged in BDS calls. That's insane. I think Texas did that too, and same with Georgia. But I think it got overturned in Georgia. I remember that Abby Martin famously fought it and took it to federal court in Georgia and won. With the UAW representing public and graduate employees at public universities, the state could be forced to divest from the UAW's pension and retirement funds, or possibly even not provide dues checkoff for the union. New York state law has allowed the state to strip unions of dues checkoff if they violate state law. It'd be a little difficult to collect money. Having been sent a serious legal threat, Borowski informed UAW President Shawn Fain of the threat in December and forwarded the letter from the ADL to to the IEB, that's the International Executive Board. Quote, although this issue is outside of the monitor's jurisdiction, we thought it was important to forward the message to the IEB given the serious concerns raised here. He's not telling them they have to do this. He's saying that they should act. He's not telling them what to do. He's saying now, he did say what his opinion was, but he asserts that it's his opinion. He says, for what it's worth, as I previously shared with Shawn, similar concerns were raised directly to me shortly after the IEB issued its own ceasefire statement. But it doesn't necessarily say that he has a problem with it. In an IEB meeting attended by top UAW officials, Borowski again brought up the legal letter from the ADL. Later, one of the UAW's attorneys objected to Borowski informing the UAW of the threat for the ADL. Wait, what? Why?
Yep.
Again, we're going to talk about who that was, while the 58-year-old veteran labor lawyer Nathaniel Carney, it's kind of funny, a felon convicted of conspiracy for obstruction of justice within the Teamsters in the 90s, he's played a key role in the legal department. Okay. While he has played one, it was the much younger 36-year-old Jewish attorney, Benjamin Dichter, who sent a letter to Borowski. So basically, he's also a Zionist who got triggered. All right. That's what's going on here. You've got a Jewish attorney that's part of the UAW that doesn't like what's going on. Okay. He says, we ask that such respect be mutual and that your office be respectful of the guardrails of your role and refrain from any further communications of the sort discussed in this email. He's just trying to stonewall the guy. After Dichter's email, all right, Borowski never mentioned the letter that he received from the ADL, so it worked. All right, but here's my favorite part, and the reason why I brought this tonight. We all know Ryan Grimm very well. We all know that Ryan Grimm has tried to play both sides of the fence when it comes to quote-unquote being a lefty or a progressive. He calls himself one while he fillets billionaires and works for multiple of them simultaneously. I want to mention that he's already said that, and they announced at The Intercept that they would be funding and supporting Ryan Grimm and Jeremy Scahill in their new effort called Drop Site News. So basically, they're rebranding the Intercept on Substack and called it Drop Site News. And ooh, it's a whole new big thing. No, it's all the same people, just brought over there and not paid directly by Pierre Omidyar, but rather, who knows how they're getting paid now. But they're still going to keep doing it. And by the way, they're still getting fed scoops. Who the hell leaves a big publications like that and gets more scoops than they had when they were there? Otto? Oh, right. You?
What?
You do? Autopilot does?
Yeah.
How about that?
I think so.
Okay, Ryan. All right. So, Crying Grimm. No, not Crying Grimm.
Is autopilot part of the pilots union? Who were the ones that tried to do the Teamsters?
Yes, that was the
UAW.
Well, that was the Alliance or Allegiant Airlines pilots. They tried to be Teamsters and they weren't being represented, so they joined the pilots union. We covered that a couple weeks ago.
That's what it was.
My buddy Dennis Yu. Pay Dennis Yu, Teamsters. Pay Dennis Yu. All right, enough Ryan Grimm, please. Ryan Grimm doesn't disclose that his editor is married to the communications director, as we said, and it gets a little testy. He gets a little upset. On February 29th, which is actually the day that I interviewed the Amazon employees, the fired Amazon employees that were purged off the board. All right. Michelle Valentin-Nieves and Ronald Boone. Shout out to all of them. Nicole Druda and Chermo. I had a great conversation with them. If you haven't seen that, please go back and watch that. That's great talk with them. So that day, the Detroit Free Press broke the news that UAW Secretary Treasurer Margaret Mock had been demoted for most of her assignments as labor leader in the UAW. That same day, Borowski sent a letter to the UAW asking for information about the demotion. She's the second ranking officer, and as we know, she's African American, and there have been problems with the person that's alongside Shawn Fain being accused of insensitive to black issues when there is a large contingent of black members. According to Autopilot, Ryan Grimm, Borowski's investigation of Mock's demotion came as direct retaliation for the union's support of a ceasefire in Gaza. Forget about the fact that there actually is a culture of fear and there was a culture of corruption, and they need to be investigated, and that's his job. His article said that on February 29th, just 6 days after, Borowski sent a sweeping demand for documents saying he was opening an investigation into Fain and a dispute Fain had with the Secretary-Treasurer. All right. However, labor law experts, including anti-Zionist ones like the University of St. Louis's Mike Duff, say that Borowski, as a lawyer, may have had merit in forwarding a potential legal threat from the ADL to the UAW. All of them said, I think forwarding a letter from the ADL out of concern that the union risked violating the anti-BDS law, leaving questions of constitutionality to one side, arguably fell within the monitor's legal ethical duty. Because if they weren't going to get funded by the New York State, don't say duty. I knew you were going to do that. You're a child. But because if they don't
I am.
If they don't get paid out by the state, if the state revokes their financial ability to raise money and to charge dues because of this thing, he's certainly within his responsibility to let them know. All right? Because, all right, some within the UAW have been pushing for the union to support BDS. However, concerns about legal and financial consequences have led to UAW International Executive Board members voting down BDS resolutions so far. If the UAW in its own international executive debates is worried about the legal and financial consequences of BDS, why would it be strange for their federal monitor to forward a legal threat from a Zionist organization known for suing critics of Zionism? It's crazy. He should. Ryan, I Need a Haircut Grimm wrote in his article that Borowski also asked for any and all emails, text messages, and instant messages sent between Fain, his top deputies, and his lawyers from February 12th through 23rd. That covers pretty much the exact time the UAW and Borowski were jockeying over the ADL's complaint about their call for a ceasefire. Again, nowhere does Grimm mention that Borowski's investigation was launched by a complaint filed by the UAW Secretary-Treasurer. He may not even have known, but he certainly never asked and never reported it. Clearly, union members would want to know why the number 2 elected union official was demoted. Again, University of St. Louis labor law professor and anti-Zionist Mike Duff says it's hard to see Grimm establish that Borowski engaged in punitive measures against the UAW. It's a pretty vague threat. I can't understand what the union was being threatened with, since the monitor could already ask for anything he wanted related to his function. The UAW, of course, did not return multiple requests for comment for this story. No surprise there. Borowski has denied ever expressing his views on Palestine. So the monitor, we don't know if he's a Zionist or not. He's staying quiet. But the evidence against him is merely that he forwarded a letter from the ADL, a controversial group that has sometimes stretched definitions of anti-Semitism to include anti-Zionism. Not sometimes. Yes. They literally had it passed in Congress.
Congress.
Yep. Okay. Borowski again told the New York Times, quote, "This false account is offensive and an obvious attempt to distract attention from the most recent report. We have adhered to standard norms of a monitorship in referring complaints to union leadership. It has nothing to do with his religion, their religion, or anybody else's religion, or their stance on massacres and ethnic cleansing and genocide," even though it's gross that there are members of UAW leadership that clearly are for genocide.
Yep.
No evidence exists tying Borowski to Zionist groups or expressing Zionist beliefs beyond him fulfilling his legal duty to forward the lawsuit threat from the ADL. However, Fain's allies on social media have repeatedly pointed to Borowski being praised by the World Jewish Congress. Why? For his work as a federal monitor of Credit Suisse when he investigated the bank's role in hiding Nazi money stolen from the Jews. So that makes him a Zionist? Even progressive activist and author Matt Stoller, who is also Jewish and half a shit lib, I would call him a mid-lib, very good on monopolies, but really bad on a lot of other stuff, says that he detests the ADL and feels that they manipulate anti-Semitism to support Israel's horrific war. And I agree. He says, as someone, Mike Elk says, as someone who was a staffer on Capitol Hill during the bailout, Stoller says that the attack on Borowski is a smokescreen designed to smear him for speaking out against the purges that Fain has initiated within his union. Shawn Fain must be protected at all costs for the Democrats. They can't have anybody else as their president, certainly not Will Lehman, that's going to stick his finger in the eye of the Democrats and leadership and the Republicans for that matter. All right? He says, I worked with him during the financial crisis. Yeah, who? I worked with him during the financial crisis, and he showed immense integrity in standing up to the biggest bank in the world, as well as a lot of corrupt people in the Obama administration, Stoller said. Borowski was heavily smeared by the Obama administration and faced threats that his role as special investigator of TARP would be defunded because he called out the big banks. He was very honest under immense pressure, and it would be hard for me, very hard for me, to imagine that he would be doing something unethical here. I've never seen him do that, and I've seen him under some pretty intense pressure. Like, what's his motivation? Afterward, Borowski published a book in 2012 titled Bailout, an Inside Account of How Washington Abandoned Main Street While Rescuing Wall Street, which is a widely read New York Times bestseller. I didn't know that. The book was a gripping account detailing how the Obama administration attempted to retaliate against him for accurately reporting on the bailout as Special Inspector General. So he's got experience with this. He said, quote, I thought that if there was ever going to be, Obama's right. I thought that if there was ever going to be a political figure that would take on the interests of Wall Street, it was going to be President Obama, and that just didn't happen. Yeah. His cabinet was literally chosen by Citigroup. It was the exact opposite of that. He had the same ideology as Secretary Tim Geithner, and frankly, the same ideology as a lot of those people who came from Wall Street. I wonder why.
Come on, people.
Yeah. Borowski's forwarding of the ADL's threat occurred in February, so why would the UAW wait until they were in trouble for not turning over documents to raise this issue? Weird. Furthermore, if Borowski did engage in political interference, the federal judge has the power to remove him from the case. Given that parties in federal monitorship often record meetings, why would Borowski risk losing his federal monitorship by bringing this issue up? It literally makes no sense. It makes no sense. Currently, it's the word of Neil Borowski, who would face severe legal penalties if he was lying, versus just one anonymous source who spoke to a reporter whose editor was married to the communications director at UAW. The UAW's own legal team has a checkered past, which would lead one to doubt their credibility. We learned about Nathaniel Charney, who was one of their top lawyers, who was responsible for helping to steer their legal strategy, again, was convicted of conspiracy to engage in obstruction of justice by another federal monitor of the Teamsters in 1998. Literally, what's happening here, he got convicted of 25 years ago. How he's allowed to do this again at the UAW, I have no idea. But Charney cooperated with federal authorities in their investigation and was able to keep his law license after an 18-month license suspension as punishment. So he took a little slap on the wrist, was able to continue practicing, and now 25 years later, he's doing it again. The younger Jewish lawyer, Benjamin Dichter, who wrote a letter complaining about Borowski's forwarding of the legal threat from the ADL, I don't know why, again, what's the problem with him forwarding a letter, is also in Borowski's crosshairs, which he should be. Borowski has asked the federal judge for Dichter's and others UAW lawyers' emails and correspondence, which Dichter, of course, has resisted.
Hey, phrasing!
No, that's his last name, but he's resisted because of attorney-client privilege, of course. All right? Why? Well, after taking over as counsel of the New York News Guild, Dichter faced criticism from New York Times reporters for not presenting a yearly budget of legal expenses. And we know why. Because an analysis by Payday Report of Federal Department of Labor financial records in July 2021 showed that legal costs doubled in the first year after he took over as union counsel. I wonder who he paid. Maybe his own firm? In 2020 alone, the union spent over $620,000 on outside legal costs instead of hiring a much cheaper in-house counsel, nearly doubling the $335,000 spent by the New York News Guild in 2019. Even pro-union labor law experts say that kind of union spending on outside legal counsel was excessive for a union local of only 4,200 members. $600,000 for only 4,200 members? So, here's my favorite part. Payday Report asks Ryan Grimm, why didn't you reveal that your top editor was married to Jonah Furman? I don't think you understand how conflicts of interest work, said Grimm, and that it was widely known in the journalism industry. How would a rank-and-file UAW member reading Grimm's article know this unless the conflict of interest was disclosed directly within the article, a fact that may have influenced his reporting? Grimm claimed that his publication's founding editor, Renner, a founding editor, wasn't directly involved in the granular work of editing the final article. However, as the publication's founding editor, she still allowed it to be published on her site without revealing her husband was the UAW communications director. Grimm repeatedly refused to answer questions about whether or not he worked directly with Jonah Furman, her husband. Over a period of 3 weeks, I attempted to engage Grimm and set up an interview with him to discuss this. He refused to answer most of my questions. Still, he did threaten to sue me if I got any facts wrong about how the founding editor of his publication was married to the UAW's communications director. He says, quote, "Do not defame my editor. We'll take it seriously. If your story is fair and accurate, great, but you're on notice." What a piece of shit. And he's got that in text. That's in writing. Every journalist's background and family connections shape the way they report, and it's important that they disclose this information. He says, for 17 years as a labor reporter, I've always disclosed that my father, Gene Elk, is the retired director of the organization of the United Electrical Workers. As a Jewish union leader, he worked to pass the first BDS resolution passed by any union in the country back in 2015. Even when writing for the New York Times about how corruption in previous UAW administrations sunk a union drive at VW in Chattanooga in 2014, I revealed that my mother had been a UAW activist when she worked at VW in Western PA in the 1980s. For 11 years, I traveled back and forth to cover 3 major UAW attempts at their plant in Chattanooga because, as the son of an auto worker, I know how important it was for rank-and-file auto workers to have accurate coverage. Following the historic union victory, the UAW has had an opportunity to organize non-union plants. Still, since the victory at Chattanooga, the UAW has stumbled, losing a narrow union election at Mercedes in Alabama. With the news of the purges and fear of intimidation within the UAW, one can't help but wonder if the infighting within the UAW is hurting their ability to take advantage of a historic moment to organize in the South. Because as, again, Federal Monitor Neil Borowski repeatedly warned, a culture of retaliation within the UAW could hurt the union's ability to achieve its goals. And again, he says, if left unchecked, these issues will inevitably impede the union's efforts to create a culture of compliance. No matter how strong its architecture of policies and procedures, the union cannot detect and prevent malfeasance, financial or otherwise, if such a sizable portion of its employees fear speaking up when they see it. Divisions within the union are also having a negative impact on union morale and, if left unaddressed, could further drag down the union's pace of reform. And again, the full 124-page report can be found linked from Payday Report. PaydayReport.com. Support Mike Elk. Support independent media. Support journalism that holds labor union bosses accountable. It's so important because they're running around acting like they're representing the people and the workers, and we know damn well that they're not. Let me also go here. Support independent media, like I said, because who else is telling you this story? Where else are they talking about this? Unless it's somewhere in a Republican district where they're trying to stick it to Shawn Fain. All right? And we're not done with Shawn Fain just yet because, man, just today. Well, actually, before that,
okay.
He's already voted for, said that they're going to endorse Harris. Right?
Right.
Let me close this. He says, when you compare Trump and Harris and what they've done for working class people, it's a very telling story. Except it's not the story that you really want to tell, of course. I said, or you could just say that they're both effing awful corporatists, but Shawn absolutely refuses to do that. What a clown. This is how you fight for your base? By endorsing an anointed, unelected candidate with no concessions because she's going to lose badly anyway. Embarrassing. It's embarrassing. All right, but that's not all. Back in May, he claimed that the UAW would never support the mass arrest or intimidation of those exercising their right to protest. This was about the Palestine protests.
Mm-hmm.
Now go vote for Joe Biden. What a clown. He's a media creation, a reformist who spoke for an entire union without asking what they thought first. I don't think he should have said free power. He shouldn't have said any of it without at least asking his union base what they wanted first and voting on it. He politicized the union, allied hard with Democrats, and alienated Republicans as if there are none among their ranks. It's gross. All right? But beyond that, this clown, stand-up UAW, we don't win by playing nice with the bosses. We win by giving working class people the tools, the inspiration, and the courage to stand up for themselves. A lot of fucking nothing, you clown, you stooge. And there, I'm telling him, he's a clown. All right? He sounds as vapid as Kamala Harris herself. Then, of course, we find out Shawn tries to explain the facts behind the decision to endorse Kamala Harris for president. There are no facts. There's just your fifis, man, because you never asked the union rank and file. Here's the short summary. He sold out without letting his members vote on it. Fuck you, Shawn Fain. You're garbage. And then finally, just today... Right, thank you. No, actually on Friday, I see this one. He's now recommending who he would like to see as Kamala's potential running mate? First of all, forget the fact that he's now, after having the fewest votes of any union president in the history of the country, now endorsing someone who's literally had 0 votes from their base. It's hilarious. Welcome to the Democratic Party, folks.
This is the most election of our lifetime.
All right. And here's what I said. Why is he even getting involved in party politics at all? Shut up and represent your base against the bosses. What the actual fuck are you idiots doing? What the actual fuck? Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mikhail. When you learn about Shawn Fain, what you learn about Shawn Fain and the UAW and INN, it's very telling. Because you don't hear about this. Nobody else wants to do this. They all want to tongue bathe him. They all want to kiss the work. They think that he represents the workers and that they're kissing the workers' ass by elevating and supporting this clown when he's knifing them in the back constantly. All right. Anna Mayers, it's like the squad pretending to hate war. The illusion people in power give a fuck about you. It's all a grift, JJ Bibbs. And where's my barbecue sauce already? Amen on that. We need to make JJ Bibbs barbecue sauce. Bad cookies. Ha! Ryan Grimm didn't disclose important information? Say it ain't so, lol. Yeah, here, he says that it's widely known.
Like JJ Bibbs is going to have like baked apple in it. You know?
Well, yes.
Definitely need some of that.
Roasted or baked apple or some kind of apple thing. Yes.
Yeah.
Emergency orange is now Anna's favorite color for obvious reasons. Yes. Cynic again, widely known by the people whose job it is to cover it up. Yes, that's exactly in journalism. It's widely known in journalism. Yeah, but how about the people that are actually reading this that would be able to take action? They are represented. No. Anna also says, I literally wrote my college senior thesis picking apart the movie A Bug's Life, and 20 years later, and we still haven't learned our lesson. Go rewatch it. It's insane. Yeah, that's
a great movie.
Pixar, right?
No, I don't think so. Maybe, but I think Dreamcast or whatever. Possibly. Could be wrong. Yeah. I might be thinking of the other bug movie.
Anna wants Granny Smith, but Jesse usually smokes out of a red apple, so that's definitely not a granny. We support independent media. We are totally user-funded. We really appreciate the people that hang out in chat. They are the people that make this network and this channel what it is. And without you guys, we don't really exist. I mean, we would do this even if it was just us. We started out just us, but man, we need all that support that you can give us. So we really appreciate that. We got that QR code up there. We talked about this last week, but we're going to have the Zago brothers create some cartoon art. They've gotten already about 15 Indie Media Award honorees they had done on this poster called Truth Tellers. Hey, how about that? IndieMediaAwards.substack.com. You can see the whole list. But those are the best of the best in independent media. From live streamers to journalists to outlets and video creators. We have a list with all of their links and ways to find and support them. And we're going to do something special this year. We teamed up with Zago Brothers to create cartoon illustrations of each Indie Media Award honoree and even some people to represent some of the outlets. We were trying to figure out what to do. And that's going to be a lot of fun. And so that's what the QR code and the Ko-fi is going to go towards, is supporting that with Zago and paying him for his time and for his work.
I think I liked it better being blind, when I couldn't read between the lines, and when I couldn't see the cracks in the structure that lay bare before me the whole time. I think I liked it better back when I suspended disbelief and swallowed pride. I thought I knew the difference in the red from the blue, but they both bleed us so dry. They both bleed us so dry.
My favorite songs don't hit the same way. I get to the end of a 4-minute track and I'm only looking back thinking, what did they actually say? So I try to...